Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Morgan Ortagus, Juan Williams, Kennedy, and Greg. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. The battle for 2020 is officially on as President Trump holds his first campaign rally in El Paso, Texas tonight. The president taking aim at Democrat Beto O'Rourke for holding a counter rally in the city as he makes his big push for border security.
We're going to El Paso. We have a line that is very long already. I mean, you see what's going on. And I understand our competitors got a line too, but it's a tiny little line. Of course, they'll make it sound like they had more people than we do. That's not going to happen. But we're going there for a reason. We're going there to keep our country safe.
This comes as the field of Democratic contenders gets even more crowded. Trump mocking Elizabeth Warren for the DNA debacle hanging over her campaign announcement. The president also poking fun at Senator Amy Klobuchar for announcing her candidacy in a snowstorm. Warren firing back against the president's ancestry attacks.
By the time we get to 2020, Donald Trump may not even be president. In fact, he may not even be a free person.
And Klobuchar addressing reports she can't find a campaign manager because she's difficult to work for.
I am tough. I push people, that is true. But my point is that I have high expectations for myself. I have high expectations for the people that work for me. And I have high expectations for this country.
And Kamala Harris also making some headlines today for this comment.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like
and I inhaled. I did inhale.
Okay.
It was a long time ago.
Was it a blunt or joint?
It was a joint.
Hey. So if it was legalized all throughout the country and medicinal, would you do it?
Listen,
again?
I think that it gives a lot of people joy, and we need more joy.
All right, Greg, we'll get to that in a second, but you and Amy Klobuchar have a lot in common. Very difficult to work for.
Exactly. I like her more and more the more I hear about her. She's got the funnest name to say. Klobuchar! You've got 24 hours, Klobuchar, to find the missing kid, or you're fired. Anyway, she's got like a 1970s cop show name. But I want to talk, can I just talk about, and also, it's not sexist to point out that she's got a bad temper. They did that with John McCain, and they did it with Bob Dole, and they do it with Trump, so it ain't sexist. In fact, it's sexist not to do it. Do you have tape of Liz with the kid?
Oh, yes. This is Elizabeth at one of her announcements this weekend.
Get over here, kid. So here's the problem with Liz Warren. Yeah, here's the problem with Liz Warren. She's like a professional wrestler who overacts in each scene and then instructs you to believe in the sport no matter what. She is a politician who pretends to be a politician wherever she goes, and it's so fake. And especially in the era of Trump, where he rejected all of that, all of the trimmings of being a politician, and he didn't care. It exposes her folly even more as a world-class phony. She is a professional wrestler, and you see all the tricks. Let me grab this kid. And then saying, like, what did she just say? He won't be a free person?
Right.
Just say free man.
Okay.
Save a syllable.
Well, free person.
Klobuchar, and we also have Kamala Harris admitting to smoking weed. What do you think?
I think it makes her a total hypocrite. I think now, conveniently, she's one of those people who's hopped on board the cannabis caravan. But in reality, people in her state of California have suffered under some of her punitive actions as Attorney General. And she even cackled a few years ago when asked about legalization of cannabis in the great state of California. This is someone who has not supported legalization.
Oh, she locked up potheads in California?
Yeah, she has locked up a bunch of nonviolent offenders and has not lobbied for their release when she absolutely could have. She misused her power. She was horrible on civil rights. And right now, it's just a popularity grab. But who wouldn't cackle with affection of my friend Charlemagne? I thought he was adorable in that clip.
Yeah, Juan, now you have another reason to vote for Kamala. She smokes grass.
I think I think the whole state of California has a reason to vote for her. That's why I think they've legalized. I was telling you guys I was in San Francisco.
Not because of her, in spite of her.
No, I think it. Look, by the way, I don't think that was a fair thing that you said, Kennedy. Because guess what? People who
I know
may have
facts are
smoked dope
inconvenient. Facts, not feelings.
Hang on, please. Enforce the law. That was her job as an officer for the state of California. Her job was to enforce the law, not to make it up. And she did it. She enforced the laws.
She selectively enforced
She
laws.
didn't selectively. She said
And,
if you break the
was horrible
law
on
with
civil
regard
asset
to selling
forfeiture.
or using it, I mean, that's the law. She enforced it. But I would say the people who go after her on charges of selective prosecution are way off on this. It's almost to me, and this comes from the left more than the right, the saying because you were a good prosecutor, you can't be a Democrat. How crazy is that?
Well, don't call yourself a progressive prosecutor if your record shows the complete opposite.
I just think she
And
was
those
a
are the
very
facts.
good prosecutor, and I think. But anyway, I'll leave that up to you. But I will say I think the news today is about Trump and El Paso because our own brain room that you like to cite, Jesse, has said violent crime wasn't higher before the wall in El Paso, and it wasn't.
So glad you brought that up,
You go
Juan,
right ahead.
because I have the
I
statistics
thought
right
so,
here from
because
the brain room.
I wanted to bring this
You
up
ready?
because it is such a sham.
No, it's not. Here it is. Here are the
Yeah.
facts, Juan.
Yes, you go right
All
ahead.
right. In 2009, when the wall was erected in El Paso, about 3,300 violent crimes reported. Last available year statistics were out, 2016, about 2,600 violent crimes reported. That's about a 20% drop in violent crime since the wall has been erected in El Paso.
Wrong.
Juan,
You're
I'm
wrong.
sorry. Not only are you
You're
disagreeing
wrong.
with me, you're disagreeing with the brain
You
room.
are, this is why I mentioned it, because you had played this farcical game before, and so I went to the brain room, and they said from 6 to 11, 06 to 2011, violent crime went up 17%.
Why cherry picking, Juan?
I'm not cherry picking. This
Juan,
is with the
there was no wall in 2006.
No,
That's when the money
wall-
was appropriated.
Right. So what
So
we
why
have
stop
here-
it at 2011?
Okay, you can go all the way. You can go all the
I
way
did.
from.
I went
from
all the way from
1985
when the
no.
wall went up until the last available year and crime went down. Morgan,
all you're doing
please
is shouting.
save Juan
All you're doing
from
is
his
shouting
ridiculous
because
false
you're wrong
statements.
and you're trying to fool the audience. But the clear fact is, Beto O'Rourke.
You're wrong, Ron.
No, the Beto O'Rourke, the sheriff in El Paso, the mayor in El Paso all say this town had a low crime rate before and after this phony wall.
I'll put the stats on my Twitter feed and everybody can see the truth. Go ahead.
We're
Morgan.
definitely going to solve this argument today, so I'm so glad we're having it. But what's interesting to me is that we had more women announce over the weekend, and what we haven't had in a presidential race, so I think we have at least 5 so far that are running. What's happened both on the Democrat side and the Republican side is there's always been one woman on stage, and there's been all of these rules about, in the senatorial races and presidential races, about how do you approach the one woman on the stage, and now that we have 4 or 5 on the stage, it'll be interesting to see how the Democrats play that out, how they argue with each other. And so I actually think it's going to be a really interesting election to see the interaction, especially between the women. And can we just preempt this sort of like catfight narrative that People Magazine and Us Weekly and all these things will put out? These women are going to battle. They're going to be really tough because they're politicians and they want to be the president. And
Klobuchar is going to be
Can I
really
just
tough.
Can I just say one thing about Klobuchar?
Yes.
I was actually intrigued hearing that she's tough on her staff. I didn't
too.
take that as a negative at all. I think if you get
You're known for being very tough.
very tough.
Yes,
You
very
know
tough.
things, don't you?
I'm practically a dominatrix in the building.
Yes, exactly.
People pay me for my service.
Do you know, but the one thing about this whole thing that is so beautiful and why this is going to be the best 2 years ever, not only do we have a field of Democrat candidates, we have ongoing director's commentary from Donald Trump. This has never happened before. We're going to have a president who's going to do ongoing commentary about everybody, and his media presence is so huge that by comparison, they will seem so small. He'll be Darth Vader, they'll be Ewoks, he'll be Gladys Knight, they'll be the Pips.
But that's not the way it played out over the weekend. When he went after Klobuchar as Snowman, or he said Snow Woman, she shot back. Oh, yeah, look, I want to see you stand out in the rain with your hair. I think you dodged some
I don't know if
events
she
down in
said that.
France.
I think somebody else did.
No, but she said it in response in her tweet that he's the one with the sensitive hair. But you know what I think? If he goes after those women, I think they fire back, and I don't think that he comes out of it.
I think that it's a joke to say that he goes after everybody. I think we learned that in
He
2016.
went after John McCain pretty hard, didn't
Yeah.
he? All right, up next, a radical new Democratic congresswoman sparking bipartisan firestorm for her latest anti-Semitic comments.
Oh.
A radical freshman member of Congress forced to apologize after bipartisan backlash over her anti-Semitic comments. Minnesota Congressman Ilhan Omar under fire, including from top leaders of her own party, over a new round of controversial tweets. Omar accused a prominent lobbying group, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, of paying members of Congress to support Israel. The freshman lawmaker released a statement saying that she, quote, unequivocally apologizes, but then went on to call AIPAC's lobby, quote, problematic. We saw a lot happen today, Kennedy. Last night, Chelsea Clinton was the only prominent Democrat to come out today, but today we did see Pelosi issue a statement, other Democrats issue a statement condemning these remarks, and of course she apologized. My question is, she sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Is this enough? Should she still be on that committee, or does the apology and the condemnation, does that just put a pretty little bow on it?
No, I think all bets are off. It depends. If this is a political ally of yours, then you have to defend her behavior, but I don't think it's okay. I don't think it's okay what Ralph Northam did. I don't think it's okay in this situation. I don't appreciate people not understanding the racist roots of the things that they mock and not fully grasping. And I don't appreciate her being an anti-Semite. And I think anti-Semitism is a huge problem right now. And it's something that is really being sort of swept under the carpet by the left. And, you know, there are people within the movement who have said pretty atrocious things and, you know, dehumanized Jewish people as a whole. And I think when we start to get into that territory, because if you take something that a Republican or another person you disagree with out of context and say this is racist, then you have to apply the same metric. Sure. And if we do that to everyone and have the exact same purity metric, it's going to be very difficult.
Juan, so Kennedy brings up a good point. There's actually a piece by Bret Stephens in the New York Times called The Progressive Assault on Israel. And I challenge everyone to read it. And Bret went through it piece by piece at an LGBTQ task force conference where they were chanting from the river to the sea, which many people knows means, you know, no state of Israel. He went through how Booker, Warren, Harris all tried to block anti-BDS legislation in the Senate. And I thought it was a pretty convincing case. And I know that we've talked about this quite a bit on The Five, where you see anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism that has taken root in somewhat mainstream policies on the left. Do you agree with that, or where do you think your party stands on Israel?
Oh, I think the party is very supportive of Israel. I don't have any question about that. I think what's going on here is you have people who are, well, in the case of Representative Tlaib from Michigan, but also Omar from Minnesota, you have people who coming in who for the first time are giving voice to people who oppose Israel's policies with regard to Palestinians. I think Tlaib is the first Palestinian woman, someone from Palestinian heritage, to be elected to the Congress.
The first woman. I think there's been other men.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the point is here that from their perspective, they are trying to criticize Israeli policies and U.S. support for Israeli policies.
So you don't think her
what
tweets
well, no, what she said was offensive because then she played into the whole meme about Jewish people having money that influences politicians. And that's what she apologized for. But I think you have lots of people, including Kevin McCarthy, now the minority leader in the House, who are jumping on this because they see this as a way to potentially divide Democrats. I hope it's not the case, and I think it's evidence that of good faith that you have people like Pelosi saying what this congresswoman did was wrong.
What do you think, Jesse? Is it political?
Yeah, of course, everything's political. I think Pelosi is the one with the problem. If you think about it, she had, you know, freshman female come in and traffic in anti-Semitism, freshman female come in and say impeach the MRFer, and another freshman female to come in and unveil a Green New Deal, which is basically a joke Republicans are now going to run against. And if you also look, someone didn't even see this headline, Maxine Waters hit with 3 new ethics violations, and she's supposed to be running House Financial Services. Pelosi has come in and done what? Besides shut the government down.
Well, everything. If
Not
you ask
much.
Hillary Clinton.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, I don't think Pelosi's got a great track record here, and this Omar person is just not ready for prime time. She's not polished enough. She's accused someone of blackmailing sexually a senator. She said horrible things about the Covington boys, and she's about to get sued for that. And she's called Israel evil. So she's a big problem.
To Jesse's point, though, Jewish leaders in her district did sit her down and talk to her about this. She's apparently had a lot of counseling, yet she still tweets these anti-Semitic things.
Well, I'm always, as I say, somebody apologize, I accept the apology, so I accept the apology. The tweet about the Benjamins, was a problem, not for the actual tweet, just the tweet, but it was in a context of things when you describe Jews as hypnotic conspirators. That's kind of a bigger issue than the Benjamins thing. The bottom line is there's a lot of countries in the Middle East, and one isn't Muslim, and that's the one she doesn't like. So we have to ask ourselves, is this a form of bigotry? And I think she apologizes, so that's a step. But you know who tweeted support for her? David Duke. So if I were to do what a liberal does and employ guilt by association, the Democrats are now the party of Sarcer, Farrakhan, Omar, and Duke.
Well, that takes effort. Okay.
Not really. It was pretty easy.
Virginia
I just did it.
Governor Ralph Northam doubles down and refuses to resign. Up next, the bizarre interview he gave to make his case.
Crisis in Virginia continuing. Governor Ralph Northam, however, says he's not going anywhere. The embattled Democrat who is resisting calls to step down over a racist yearbook photo says he believes he can help his state heal.
What have you learned that you didn't know before?
Well, several things, starting with I was born in white privilege, and that has implications to it. I've also learned why the use of blackface is so offensive. I have thought about resigning, but I've also thought about what Virginia needs right now. Right now, Virginia needs someone that can heal. There's no better person to do that than a doctor.
Northam also addressing why he walked back his initial apology.
I definitely overreacted, and again...
But why did you do that?
Well, when you're in a state of shock like I was, we don't always think as clearly as we should. I just said, I know it's not me in the Klan outfit, and I started looking in the picture of the individual with blackface, and I said, that's not me either.
Were you thinking about showing off your moonwalking skills?
No, because
No?
I don't have those at age 59. But I will tell you, Gail, I regret that. This is a serious moment.
It's very serious.
And whether it was a nervous laugh or whatever, it was inappropriate.
Meanwhile, a Virginia lawmaker's plan to impeach Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax now on hold. This comes after a second woman came forward to accuse Fairfax of sexual assault. Fairfax is now calling on the FBI to investigate both of the claims being made against him. Kennedy, I saw you saying you don't believe the governor.
I don't believe the governor. I absolutely don't. When he says, you know, he's trying to excuse it using a term that Greg appropriately calls virtue signaling. And all he's trying to do is take a fantastical phrase from the left and apply it here like a Band-Aid. And I think there's much more beneath the surface. And I applaud Gayle King for trying to get to the truth of his motivation. I think Northam looks at Brett Kavanaugh and even the president, who are much more unapologetic than politicians were, maybe 3 years ago. And certainly some in the current climate, like Al Franken, who must be looking at all this saying, I wish I had just stuck around, because if you're the last man standing, you get to keep your job. I think he's also looking at Justin Fairfax. And, when you weigh these two cases, the charges against Fairfax are incredibly serious and damning. He's had even more staffers quit over the episode, which has now been compounded by a second accuser coming forward and saying that he sexually assaulted yet another woman.
So, Jesse, Kennedy doesn't buy this white privilege business. He said he's 59 years old, obviously grew up on the eastern shore of Virginia. I wonder what you think.
Well, I thought she blew the interview. It was soft. It was a rehab interview. Why didn't she ask him, if it wasn't you, why'd you put the picture on your yearbook page? I mean, it's such an easy question. I don't know why she didn't ask that.
You should call her.
Yeah, I'll call Gail. The speed dial.
You guys still talk?
Yeah. Not as much as we used to.
I know.
Oprah kind of got
God
between
tell
us.
her.
There was an interesting poll that showed black Virginians were more willing to forgive than white Virginians. And I thought, why don't we have a man-on-the-street person to go down to Virginia and ask these questions? I can't think of a better person to go. But...
I mean, you.
Why would you say that, Juan?
You're the man on the street.
I know.
We're not paying for your vacation.
Someone should go down to Virginia and ask people what they think.
Oh, my goodness.
But in all seriousness...
But in the summertime.
Yeah, when the Nationals are playing in D.C. Here's what the Democrats have done, though. They have given the biggest political gift to Republicans. They have doubled down on a double blackface scandal and a double sexual assault allegation scandal. So now, anytime anything happens, Republicans get 2 get-out-of-jail-free cards, and any Republican commentator gets 2 talking points.
Wow, so this was all about you.
No. Well, usually it is, but in all seriousness, you guys are killing yourselves with
All
this
right,
thing.
okay. So, Maureen, what about Fairfax?
Yeah.
So you now have his staff, as Kennedy was saying, apparently leaving in large numbers. I think he's left with 2 people. And over the weekend, he's saying, just give me my due process, which I think was the last thing we heard from Kavanaugh.
Well, I agree with him, and I think this is one of the tragedies of politicizing Me Too, and that whole movement that started as speaking, with men who were in power and using that power over women. It was this movement that had nothing to do with politics. It got politicized during Kavanaugh, and the problem is that we never finished having the national conversation about how do you hear women and believe their stories, but at the same time, give the guys the due process they deserve, or turn around, it could be either gender. And I think that's a big tragedy of all of this, is you're either zero tolerance or you're not. And then what is the fair process for giving someone, the benefit of the doubt of giving them due process? I would say the other reason why this has been just a catastrophe, the way it's been handled in Virginia, is because it's the top 3, and there's an election in November, and Republicans hold at least 1 or 2 seats in both the House and the Senate majority. It's going to be a contentious election, and if it was an election, and if it wasn't all 3 top policymakers, you will probably see a bit of a different reaction.
And you also know Fairfax. How does this play into that?
I think that this happens to a lot of us, people who knew Kavanaugh, and those of us, my husband and I know Justin, and you see someone who's in the public light and something happens to them, and it's so different from the person that you've known. And that's why it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat or whatever your political philosophy is. There's racism, sexism in America and around the world. And when you politicize this stuff, when you politicize Kavanaugh in order not to get a Supreme Court, it just ends up hurting everybody in the process.
Well, and that's what Republicans warn Democrats about.
Okay, so let me go to our poll expert.
Yes.
Because
Well, thank you, Juan.
I think you have some very interesting numbers to share.
I don't have any numbers. How dare you set me up like that?
Set me up.
I want to say, no, I have a theory, and I want to ask you here. But first, the definition of a hack is somebody who demands due process for the person on their side, but doesn't demand it for the person on the other side. So if you were demanding due process for Kavanaugh, you owe it to Fairfax as well. I think that's true. I think the governor, you can't tell whether he's digging in or digging his own grave. It's hard to tell. He said that being a doctor, he can bring Virginia to the next level. Is the next level grand wizard? Because I don't know. He's 2 parts stupid and 1 part dumb. Anyway, so here's my theory.
Yes.
So the higher, what Jesse brought up, the higher percentage of blacks favor him staying in over a percentage of whites. So why is that? Is it because whites have to virtue signal in public and say he's got to resign, but blacks don't? You follow me?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
But what I think is, in fact, that black people, having lived through the history of racism in this country, will say, you know what, it's possible to forgive. And guess what? His record as governor is actually pretty good on
Is that interesting? I find that interesting. I find it that the forgiveness is higher. I think people can learn from that.
I'm not sure. I think it's true. I just don't know if it's good, Greg, because I think sometimes people, it's like a child that gets abused or whatever. You're always saying, my parents really are good people, and it's going to be all right. What were you going to say?
Yeah, but you also mentioned his policies. They might be looking at his policies, too.
Yes, I agree. I think they are looking at his policies. All right, a new bombshell in the heated battle between billionaire Jeff Bezos and the National Enquirer. You got to see this stuff, and you can only see it here on The 5 next.
Down. National Enquirer firing back against allegations of blackmail and extortion from Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos. This comes after the Amazon founder claimed the magazine threatened to publish explicit photos of him and his mistress if he didn't stop investigating how the tabloid got his private text messages. The attorney for the Enquirer's CEO saying they did nothing wrong.
It absolutely is not extortion and not blackmail. What happened was the story was given to the National Enquirer by a reliable source that had given information to the National Enquirer for 7 years prior to this story. It was a source that was well known to both Mr. Bezos and Ms. Sanchez.
Oh, the Enquirer also wanted Bezos to publicly say that its reporting was not politically motivated. Now, meanwhile, a bombshell new report says the anonymous source of the leaked texts and pictures to the tabloid is, in fact, Michael Sanchez, the brother of Bezos' girlfriend, Lauren Sanchez. So, Greg, what stands out to you most in this story?
Because it's a dirty Sanchez.
You have to pick a side here. You're either Team Bezos or pro-Pecker. David Pecker is the
This is a
CEO
difficult story
of
for
American
a
Media.
for an infantile humorist like myself, in which every avenue gives an opportunity. The guy's name is Sanchez, the other guy's name is Pecker, and I gotta be serious. All right, I sympathize with Bezos, because I like anybody who stands up to any kind of extortion or blackmail. I thought that what Peter Thiel did with Gawker was important. I thought what Trump did to the Daily Telegraph was important. So anytime that you feel that something's happening, and he's a billionaire, so he can withstand it, other people like us can't.
No,
Jesse.
it's true. And so,
Well,
do you
Greg,
think-
I would just like to say that I think the National Enquirer is a sterling publication. And
They do have pictures, Jesse. I know they do.
And they have been right about O.J. and about Jesse Jackson and about Tiger Woods
And about the
and
Edwards.
about John Edwards. But if
They've been
I'm
around
in the
for
magazine,
40
it's all
years.
wrong. If I'm ever in the magazine, they're all wrong. I will say this, though. I will say this. I usually think when there's a humiliating, salacious scandal that person had it coming, and they deserve it, except if it's about me or one of the people that I like, then it was a smear job.
Yeah.
I also think that men will do really dumb things when beautiful women are involved, even billionaires. So if Russia were smart, they'd stop trying to interfere in the election. They would just send 10,000 of their most adorable women to Washington
I think they've
and just
done that.
wreak havoc all over D.C., and that would probably sink us.
Have you ever seen the Russian women who've been indicted and questioned? So, Juan, this happens with greater regularity than we know about, doesn't it? I mean, how often are powerful people and famous people blackmailed so their dirty laundry doesn't appear on the pages of the National Enquirer?
Well,
how often are they catching and killing stories for cold hard party cash?
Ask Donald Trump and Michael Cohen. I think they have some stories to tell, but the fact is that
So was
it
this
seems
blackmail
to
and
be,
extortion? As Bezos,
What?
was this blackmail and extortion as Bezos claims?
I think it's pretty clear line. Bezos, in fact, connects the dots. He says that they wanted him to issue a statement saying that there was no political motivation to the initial story. And then when he was slow to respond, they then say, if you don't do it, here are these nasty pictures, you know, some of them very scurrilous, awful pictures that we're going to release. Well,
That depends
what
on
is
the eye
that?
of the beholder.
That's a prime. I'm sorry.
Nothing.
Okay.
No, it depends who's looking at them. Who might say they're scurrilous or untoward.
I don't think
Others might call it art.
Yeah, but I don't think you or me would want those pictures in the public domain. And so it was intended to embarrass the richest man and the owner of the Washington Post. And I might say this also, that when you hear from Bezos' side, he thinks this is highly political. He thinks the Saudi Arabians may have been involved. He thinks, according to some of the reporting, that the National Security Agency under the Trump may have been involved in securing those. Now, you just heard the lawyers say not so, that it came from someone who I suspect, as you point out, was the brother.
But yeah, and Michael Sanchez, like his whole involvement in this thing is so strange, and you haven't heard any denials from him. And the lawyer for AMI is saying, oh no, this guy's been giving us stuff for years. So finally, Jeff Bezos stands up and he's like, I've got billions of dollars and I've got a newspaper. Let's do this.
Every time there's like some sort of wild conspiracy theory, it's generally the easier thing, you know, the easier story that comes to play. I mean, he seems to have really picked a winner here. I mean, her family, her brother, that's pretty nasty. Although I do have a little pet peeve on this whole story, and it happens every time one of these breaks. What is the name for a man who cheats on his wife? What's the name? What do you call him? When a woman cheats, she's always called the mistress. Do you know what I'm saying? And so they're labeling her, and he's done it together. And so I don't know. It's just my own pet peeve.
So should
that
should he be
women
labeled
get
the mistress
in this.
here?
Yeah, or something. Right?
Mr. Stress.
Why shouldn't he have the same treatment?
Yeah. You know why? Because the world is a horrible place, and we should all go back to bed and take a nap. Just watch Fox News and Fox Business weeknights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 in the West. President Trump, so moved, ripping the latest White.
The media is freaking out yet again over their new favorite phrase, executive time. Wonder what that means. After another anonymous leak of the president's schedule, the Trump administration is trying to find out who's responsible for these leaks.
And how close are you to finding who did it?
I'm hoping to have a resolution on that this week. When you find that person or persons, and it's likely going to be a career staffer, you're going to learn a lot about how hard it is to fire federal workers.
Meanwhile, Mr. Bozo Face, a.k.a. Joe Scarborough, is trashing Trump after he tweeted, quote, "No president ever worked harder than me." Watch this.
What an absolute,
So great.
absolute
Playtime.
He spends the majority of his time watching cable news and tweeting, yelling, staring at TV sets like an old man that is in a retirement home instead of a president of the United States.
And you helped elect him. His commentary is almost as good as his music. Juan, in the break, you said people who leak about the greatest... What?
That was the monologue?
Yeah, no monologue today. I had a doctor's appointment, Jesse.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
You want to know what for?
No.
Go to my blog, Greg's Intestines, for more information. Juan, in the break, you said people who leak against President Trump, the greatest president of our lifetime, should be executed. That's what you said.
That's right. Yeah. And you believed it, right? No, I didn't say that. But I must say, what's curious to me about this was, if you actually look at the documents, nobody says this is bogus. This is not true. It's true that last week, 4 days last week, he spent half his time in executive time.
But why is that? Isn't the ugly truth is that most jobs, half of it is nonsense. We essentially work in spurts, right? And then you stop and you do things. You go, you text your friends, you go have coffee, you pop a painkiller.
What?
That was just me. Anyway, Kennedy, the truth is he's like us. Half our day is executive time.
Well, you can.
Jesse, it's
You know,
90%.
it's like forcing some people into college who don't want to sit around in musty classrooms listening to a TA lecture about socialism. There are some people who need unstructured time in order to be productive. I don't necessarily like all the things that the president says and tweets, but I don't have a problem with this because just because there are unnamed blocks of time and just because he doesn't follow the exact same protocol as every other president, I don't think that's necessarily harmful because he's still doing something. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. I think the proof is in the pudding when he reacts to other people in the media when it's sort of needless and he keeps stories going when they would be much better off dying.
It'd be nice if he read his intelligence briefing.
Well, we heard that earlier on, but then we've also heard the opposite from people within the administration, that he amended that. And I think that was a source of concern for him, that people thought that he was careless. He was a big careless whisper.
Morgan, you know what I love about this is the same people that are complaining about what Trump does are now complaining that he doesn't do enough.
Yeah, what do they want him doing in
Yeah.
his executive time that he, you want him pursuing more policy?
Yeah.
You don't
No, I'd
agree
like him
with?
to prepare and do the job. That's a lot. Now you ask a guy to do the job. Boy, if this was
He's
Obama, I can hear you.
I mean, let's go through the record on the economy and tax cuts, and we can go through a list of things that he'll be saying tonight, I'm sure, in his speech and his rally about the number of things that he's gotten done. I will say that the leaking thing does bother me as a national security person because, at some point, it's just the president's schedule, and you think that's nothing, but then it's a conversation with another head of state, and then it's more classified material. That's something that they've really, gotten taken care of over the last couple of years, but I don't like it when it happens.
Jesse, how do you deal with leaks in your administration?
Oh, wow. Depends.
I just want to take a moment of silence for the monologue. Everybody, just give me a moment.
You're still mad that I didn't do a monologue.
What happened to the monologue?
I had to go see...
I come in here expecting a monologue. The audience expects the monologue, and we don't get a monologue.
I had to go see Dr. Siegel this morning.
Oh,
and,
no.
That was like, a couple hours.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. I think I pulled a muscle.
Was a lot of executive time, though,
Yes,
for you?
yes,
Because how long was the appointment?
It was a couple hours.
Was
A couple
this
hours?
Yes.
Was it surgery?
No.
I think it was Trump's doctor. That's why you got the.
He said I was in fantastic
He's
health.
okay.
The best health ever, of any
Yes.
5 host ever.
Yes.
Ever.
So I noticed you don't have an opinion on this, Jesse.
Listen, he's getting a lot done, Greg, and they'll never find the leaker.
What do you think? I think what people are trying to comprehend is what he does in the executive time.
You know what he does? He watches Fox and CNN and MSNBC, and then he'll tweet about it, and then everybody will get great ratings. And besides that, he's doing interviews and he's having meetings.
I think he takes a lot of meetings and phone calls during that time.
You know what? Okay.
I think he's on the phone calls.
Well, see, here's
a
your
lot of phone calls.
A lot of people don't understand what a CEO does.
Right.
And a CEO doesn't do a normal workday.
Right.
He walks in, he's on the phone, he does stuff. That's what he does.
If you read almost every single book about the presidency, during this executive time, there's hundreds of people coming in to see him and speak to him and compete for his attention.
They're going up to the private headquarters. you are so wrong. But I'm just delighted
You know what?
at the
He's
extent to
taking
which you will
phone calls
defend
and he's
any-
working.
He reads Jesse's tweets. We know that.
I will say this. I mean, and it boils down maybe to process. And maybe his process is talking about things and talking about the same
to his
things
friends
with
while
well, not
watching
necessarily
TV.
Whatever he's doing,
What I do.
it's working.
All
Let's
right.
put it that way.
within the administration.
One more thing is up next.
Go.
Yes. News. That's me as a float. Kind of creepy, isn't it? All right, sometimes it takes other countries to really appreciate what we have here in America.
Yes.
Let's go to Italy, shall we? Where they had, this is at the annual Viaggio Carnevale parade. Did I say that correct? Which began in 1873. Anyway, that's Donald Trump. The float is titled The Master Drone, created by Fabrizio Galli. And it emulates the dominant character of Warhammer 40,000. Don't know exactly what I'm saying right now. I'm just reading off a sheet of facts. But Trump represents the dominant male par excellence. I just think it's a fantastic float, and that should be.
like it.
Is
I
it
think
true that Trump has contacted Italy and wants it for the military parade?
I think that would be a great idea. Why aren't we showing what it is? There it is. Isn't that fantastic? Juan, you want one of these in your backyard.
He looks scary there. That's
Yes.
that's not exactly flattering.
You know, that's better. You know, that should be tethered to Mount Rushmore.
There's an idea.
Yes.
Kennedy.
Oh, you know that I'm a big fan of lesser and greater primates. And in Belfast, Ireland, in Northern Ireland, rather, at the Belfast Zoo, there were some storms that weakened trees by the chimpanzee enclosure. And these smarty pants fastened some of the fallen branches together and made themselves a bit of a ladder and got out of their enclosure.
Amazing.
And look at them. They yearn for a life outside of the enclosure. They know that there's something greater out there.
You know what it is? It's clever lower thirds, like the great escape. That's what they want. That's what they're aspiring to.
The ape and great escape.
Very
I think
good.
that they're fantastic.
The great escape.
I was
I,
inspired by that.
for one, found it brilliant.
Well, I thought this was really cute. I found this today. This is a very sweet friendship. Meet Elway the duck.
Ah.
He is a rescued duck, and his best friends are all dogs, which I think is really cute. Elway was rescued when he was only 4 weeks old and immediately fell in love with the other pets on the farm. Elway and his dog brothers are inseparable, so much so that the owner thinks that the duck thinks he's one of the dogs.
Duck, duck, whoop.
And his very best friend is a little chihuahua named Stout. I think there he is. There's the little chihuahua. He eats the same meal schedule as the dog. He rests on the dog bed, plays with the dog.
We get it.
Cute.
You know,
So
Greg,
when they run out of food
Greg.
on the farm, who's going to eat who?
Greg, for someone that didn't come in with a monologue, I don't think you should be busting the chops
Hey,
of
wait a
the
second,
producers.
Jesse, that is Mr. Animals Are Great.
How dare they? That's my turf.
Great.
Morgan, that's my turf.
That's maybe that's the
Rescue
point.
ducks.
Set your DVRs, never miss an episode of The Five special.